Welcome to Fly Right Aviation Education, the hazards. The purpose of this video is to provide pilots with a better understanding of the individual weather hazards of IFR conditions, mountain obscuration, icing, turbulence, mountain wave, mechanical turbulence, and thunderstorms. We're going to use my weather risk assessment chart, and I'm going to show you how to determine the likelihood of encountering or not encountering those conditions for each of the 6 hazards. Now, in the weather portion of the trio, you're going to gain competence at determining weather conditions conducive to weather hazards. Then in putting it all together, the third section of the trio, you'll test your knowledge. And we also have a section for student pilots or those of you that are new to aviation weather, where you'll learn the very basics of weather briefings and successfully talking to flight service. Now, here in the hazards video, we aren't going to look at weather from a viewpoint of a standard weather brief, which is important, using that standard weather brief format. In this video, we are simply, or the set of videos, we are simply going to look at this from the viewpoint of evaluating specific potential hazards using the risk assessment chart to determine the likelihood of encountering these conditions. The weather risk assessment chart identifies a primary resource to uncover any particular hazard and the secondary resources also. Along the left side are the various hazards. You'll notice that right underneath it, it has each hazard, it has an area for you to write your personal limitations. I highly recommend that you do so. Next is the primary tools for identifying the hazards. You'll notice that most of these are current conditions. Now, with the exception of air mets, most of the adverse conditions from a weather brief are only forecast when they actually exist. SIGMETs, convective SIGMETs, center weather advisories, and severe weather watches are typically only issued when the condition exists. Urgent pilot reports obviously are only issued by pilots when they're encountering those conditions and only stay in the system for a very short while. For that reason, those are included as the primary tools, while air mets are listed as a secondary tool. If the hazard is evident with any of the primary tools, you can consider the hazard to exist. Seems straightforward, right? Also, if the tool is not part of your standard weather brief, it will have an asterisk next to it. If any of the tools in the primary category confirm the conditions, I consider the hazard to exist. In the secondary column, these are forecast tools. I have them listed in the order that I find most valid. TAFs are generally more accurate than air mets, etc. If you have 2 of the tools in the secondary column indicating a potential for the condition, it's a pretty good guess you're going to run into that condition, as it means you have 2 separate forecasters that agree that there's a potential for the hazard. The only exception to that is the TAF and the aviation forecast discussion, which is written by the same forecaster. However, I have a lot of confidence in the TAFs and the AFDs, and I believe them to be one of the most accurate forecast tools available. Now, if you have even one of the forecasts in the secondary column forecasting the conditions, you have a possibility of those conditions, and you'll have to know how to evaluate the weather further, which is what you'll learn as you proceed through the trio. So I recommend you print out the weather risk assessment chart. We're going to be talking about it a lot during the next 6 videos.